Hello, Project Focus students from Holton Middle School. How are you? This is Carlos. Seems like it's been forever since we've seen each other. So what we're doing today is we're going to start a book. We're going to read together the book Wonder. Wonder is about a middle school student, and in this book, his story, he has many lessons that we need a little reminder of once in a while. So I thought it'd be worthy if we could read it together. You can sit there and listen along to the story, and later, when we're done with the book, we will have some projects and some activities about the book. But we will read this book together. So have a seat, relax, and we'll get started. Ordinary. I know I'm not ordinary 10-year old kid. I mean, sure, I do ordinary things. I eat ice cream. I ride a bike. I play ball. I have a Xbox. Stuff like that makes me ordinary, I guess. And I feel ordinary inside. But I know ordinary kids don't make other ordinary kids run away screaming in playgrounds. I know ordinary kids don't get stared at whenever they go. If I found a magic lamp, I would have one wish. I would wish that I had a normal face and no one would ever notice it at all. I would wish that I could walk down the street without help people seeing me and then doing the look away thing. Here's what I think. The only reason I'm not ordinary is that no one else sees me that way. But I'm kind of used to how I look by now. I know how to pretend. I don't see the faces people make. Well, we've all gotten pretty good at that sort of thing. Me, mom, dad, Via. Actually, I take that back. Via's not good at it. She can get really annoyed when people do something rude. Like, for instance, one time at the playground, some older kids made some noises. I don't know even know if the noises were exactly because I didn't hear them myself, but Via heard and she just started yelling at the kids. That's the way she is. It's not that way. I'm not that way. Via doesn't see me as ordinary. She says she does. But if I were ordinary, she wouldn't feel like she needed to protect me as much. And mom and dad don't see me as ordinary either. They see me as extraordinary. I know the only people in the world who realize how ordinary I am is me. My name is Augustus, by the way. I don't describe that what I look like. Whatever you're thinking is probably worse. What did I go to school? Why did I go to school? Next week I start the fifth grade. Since I've never been a real school before, I'm pretty much totally and completely petrified. People think I haven't gone to school because of the way I look, but that's not true. It's because all the surgeries I've had, 27 since I was born, the bigger ones happened before I was even 4 years old. So I don't remember those. But I have had two or three surgeries every year since then. One big, some small, and because I'm a I'm little for my age, and I have some other medical mysteries the doctors never really figured out. I used to get sick a lot. That's why my parents decided it was better if I didn't go to school. I'm much stronger now, though. The last surgery I had was 8 months ago, and I probably won't have to have any more for another couple years. Mom homeschools me. She used to be a child's book illustrator. She draws really great fairies and mermaids. Her her boy stuff isn't so hot though. She once tried to draw me a Darth Vader, but it ended up looking like some weird mushroom shaped robot. I haven't seen her draw anything in a long time. I think she's too busy taking care of me and Via. I can't say I always wanted to go to school because that wouldn't be exactly true. But I wanted to go back to school, but only if I could be like every other kid going back to school. Have lots of friends, hang out with others, hang out after school and stuff like that. I have a few really good friends now. Christopher is my best friend, followed by Zachary and Alex. We've all known each other since we were babies. And since they've always known me the way I am, they're used to me. Then when we were little, we used to have play dates all the time. And then Christopher moved to Bridgeport in Connecticut. That's more than an hour away from where I live in North River Heights, which is at top tip of Manhattan. And Zachary and Alex started going to school. It's funny, even though Christopher's the one who moved away far away, I still see him more than I see Zachary and Alex. They have all these new friends now. If we bump into each other on the streets, they're still nice to me, though. They always say hello. I have other friends too, not as good as Christopher and Zach and Alex were. For instance, Zach and Alex always invited me to their birthday parties when we were little, but Joel and Emma and Gabe never did. Emma invited me once, but I haven't seen her in a long time. And of course, I always go to Christopher's birthday. Maybe I'm making too big of a deal about birthday parties. How I came into life. I like when Mom tells the story because it makes me laugh so much. It's not funny in the way a joke is funny, but when Mom tells it, Vi and I just start cracking up. So when I was in my mom's stomach, no one had any idea I would be come out looking the way I did. Mom had Via for 4 years, and that's had been much of pretty much a walk in the park. Mom's expression. Then there's no reason to run away to run any special test. About 2 months before I was born, the doctor realized there was something wrong with my face, but they didn't think it was going to be bad. They told Mom and Dad I had a cleft palate and some other stuff going on. They called it small anomalies. There were two nurses in the delivery room that night. The night I was born. One was very nice and sweet. The other one, Mom says, she did not seem like at all nice or sweet. She had very big arms, and here comes the funny part. She kept farting, like she'd bring Mom some ice chips and then fart. Then check Mom's blood pressure, then fart. Mom says it was unbelievable because the nurse never even said excuse me. Meanwhile, Mom's regular doctor wasn't on duty that night, so Mom got stuck with a cranky kid doctor she and Dad nicknamed Doogie after some old TV show or something. They didn't actually call him that to his face, but Mom says that even though everyone in the room was kind of grumpy, Dad kept making her laugh all night long. When I came out of my mom's stomach, she said the whole room got very quiet. Mom didn't even get a chance to look at me because the nice nurse immediately rushed me out of the room. Dad was Dad was in such a hurry to follow what the that he dropped the video camera, which broke into a million pieces. Then, when Mom got very upset and tried to get out of bed to see what was to see where they were going, but the farting nurse put her very big arms on Mom to keep her down in the bed. They were practically fighting because Mom was hysterical, and the farting nurse was yelling at her to stay calm, and then both started screaming for the doctor. But guess what? He had fainted right on the floor. So when the farting nurse saw that he had fainted, she started pushing him with her feet to get up, to wake up, yelling at him the whole time. What kind of doctor are you? What kind of doctor are you? Get up, get up. And then all of a sudden, she let out the biggest, loudest, smelliest fart in the history of farts. Mom thinks it was actually the fart that finally woke the doctor up. Anyways, when Mom tells the story, she acts like all the parts, including the farting noise, and it is so funny. Mom says that the farting nurse turned out to be a very nice woman. She stayed with Mom the whole time, didn't leave her side, even though Dad came back and the doctor told him how sick I was. Mom remembers actually that the nurse whispered in her ear when the doctor told her I probably would have lived. I wouldn't live through the night. Everyone's born of God, overcomes the world. And the next day, after I had lived through that night, I was that. It was that nurse who held Mom's hand when they brought her to meet me for the first time. Mom says by then she had told her all about me. She had been preparing herself for seeing me, but she says that when she looked into my tiny, mushed up face for the first time, all she could see was how pretty my eyes were. Mom is beautiful, by the way, and Dad is handsome. Via is pretty, in case you were wondering. Christopher's house. I was really bummed when Christopher moved away 3 years ago. We were both around 7 then. We used to spend hours playing with our Star Wars action figures and dueling with our lightsabers. I miss that. Last spring, we drove over to Christopher's house in Bridgeport. Me and Christopher were looking for snacks in the kitchen, and I heard Mom talking to Lisa, Christopher's mom, about me going to school in the fall. I have never, ever heard her mention school before. What are you talking about? I said. Mom looked surprised, like that she hadn't meant it for me to hear. You should tell him what you've been thinking, Isabel. Dad said he was on the other side of the living room talking to Christopher's dad. We should talk about this later, said Mom. No, I want to know what you were talking about, I answered. Don't you think we're ready for school, Augie? Mom said. No, I said. I don't either, Dad said. Then then that's it. Case closed, I said, shrugging, and I sat in her lap like I was a baby. I was just thinking you need to learn more than I can teach you, Mom said. I mean, come on, Augie. You know how bad I am at fractions. What school? I said. What school? I said. I already felt like crying. Breacher Prep, right by us. Wow, that's a great school, Augie, said Lisa, patting my knee. That's Why not Via School? I said. That's too big, Mom said. I don't think you would be a good fit for. It would be a good fit for you. I don't want to, I said. I admit. I made my voice sound a little babyish. I don't have to do anything you don't. You don't have to do anything you don't want to, Dad said, coming over and lifting me out of Mom's lap. He carried me over to sit on his lap on the other side of the sofa. We won't make you do anything you don't want to do, but it would be good for him, Nate, Mom said. No, he has no he doesn't want to. Not if he doesn't want to, answered Dad, looking at me. Not if he's not ready. I saw Mom look at Lisa, who reached over and squeezed her hand. You guys will figure it out, she said to Mom. You always have. Let's just talk about it later, said Mom. I could tell she and Dad were going to get into a fight about it. I wanted Dad to win the fight, though part of me knew Mom was right. And the truth is, she really was a terrible at fractions. Driving. It was a it was a long drive home. I fell asleep in the back seat like I always do, my head on Via's lap like she was my pillow, a towel wrapped around the seatbelt so I wouldn't drool all over her. Via fell asleep too, and Mom and Dad talked quietly about grown up things I didn't care about. I don't know how long I was asleep, but when I woke up, there was a full moon outside the car window. It was a purple night, and we were driving on the highway full of cars, and then I heard Mom and Dad talk about me. We can't protect him, Mom whispered to Dad, who was driving. We can't just pretend he's going to wake up tomorrow and this isn't going to be his reality, because it is, Nate. And we have to help him learn to deal with it. We can't just keep avoiding situations. So sending him off to middle school like a lamb to the slaughter, Dad answered angrily. But he didn't even finish the sentence because he saw me in the mirror looking up. What's the lamb to the slaughter? I asked sleepishly. Sleepishly. Go back to sleep, Augie, Dad said softly. Everyone will stare at me at school, I said. Suddenly crying. Honey, Mom said. She turned around in the front seat and put her hand on my hand. You know, if you don't want to do this, you don't have to. But we spoke to the principal there and told him about you, and he really wants to meet you. What did you tell him about me? How funny you are, and how kind and smart. When I told him you read Dragon Rider when you were 6, he was like, "Wow, I have to meet the kid." You tell him anything else? I said. Mom smiled at me. She smiled. Her smile kind of hugged me. I told him about all your allergies or surgeries and how brave you are, she said. So he knows that what I look like, I said. Well, we brought pictures from last summer in Montauk, Dad said. We showed him pictures of the whole family in that great shot of you holding the flounder of the boat. You were there too. I have to admit, I felt a little disappointed that he was part of this. We both talked to him, yes, Dad said. He's a really nice man. You will like him, Mom added. Suddenly, it felt like they were on the same side. Wait, so when did you meet him? I said. He took us on a tour of the school last year, said Mom. Last year, I said. So you've been thinking about this for a whole year and you didn't tell me? We didn't know if you'd ever get in, Augie, answered Mom. It's a very hard school to get into. There's a whole admission process. I didn't see the point of telling you and having you get all worked up about it unnecessarily. But you're right, Augie. We should have told you when we found out last month that you got in, Dad said. In hindsight, Mom said, yes, I guess. Did that lady who came to the house that time have something to do with this? I asked. The one that gave me that test? Yes, actually, Mom, said Mom, looking guilty. Yes. You told me it was an IQ test, I said. I know, well, that was a little white lie, she answered. It was a test they needed to take, you need to take to get you into school. You did very well on it, by the way. So you lied, I said. A white lie, but yes, sorry, she said, trying to smile, but when I didn't smile back, she turned around in her seat and faced forward. What's a lamb to the slaughter, I said. Mom sighed and Dad gave a look. I should have said that, Dad said, looking at him in the rearview mirror. It's not true. Here's the thing. Mom and I love you so much that we want to protect you any way we can. It's just sometimes we don't want it to be we want it to be different in different ways. I don't want to go to school, I answered, folding my arms. It would be good for you, Augie, said Mom. Maybe I'll go next year, I answered, looking out of the window. Why? Because you'll be going into fifth grade, and that's the first year of middle school for everyone. You won't be the only new kid. It'll be the only kid who looks like me, I said. I'll be the only kid that looks like me, I said. I'm not going to say that it won't be a big challenge for you because you know better than that, she said. But it's good for you, Augie. You'll have lots of friends. You'll make lots of friends and you'll learn things you never learned from me. She turned in her seat and again looked at me. When we took the tour, you know what we had in their science lab. A little baby chick that was just hatching out of her egg. It was so cute, Augie. It actually kind of reminded me of you when you were a little baby with those big brown eyes of yours. I usually love when they talk about me when I was a baby. Sometimes I want to curl up into a little tiny ball and let them hug me and kiss me all over. I miss being a baby, not knowing stuff, but I wasn't in that mood right now. I don't want to go, I said. How about this? Can you at least meet Mr. Tushman before making up your mind? Mom said. Mr. Tushman, I said. He's the principal, answered Mom. Mr. Tushman? I repeated. I know, right? Dad answered, smiling and looking at me in the rearview mirror. Can you believe that name, Augie? I mean, who on earth would ever agree to have a name like Mr. Tushman? I smiled even though I didn't want to let them see me smile. Dad was the one person in the world who could make me laugh no matter how much I didn't want to laugh. Dad always made everyone laugh. Augie, you should go to the school just so you can hear his name said over the loudspeaker, Dad said excitedly. Can you imagine how funny that would be? Hello, hello, paging Mr. Tushman. He was using a fake high old lady voice. Hi, Mr. Tushman. I see you're running a little behind today. Did you get your car rear-ended again? What a bum rap. I started laughing, not even because I thought he was being that funny, but because I wasn't in the mood to stay mad anymore. It could be worse, though, Dad continued in his normal voice. Mom and I had a professor in college called Miss Butt. Mom was laughing now, too. Is that for real? I said. Roberta Butt, Mom answered, raising her hand as to swear. Bobby Butt. She had huge cheeks like Dad. Nate, said Mom. What? How did big cheeks is all I wait. She had big cheeks is all I'm saying. Mom laughing and took her head at this same time. Hey, I know, said Dad excitedly. Let's fix them up on a blind date. Can you imagine? Miss Butt and Mr. Tushman? Mr. Tushman's here, Miss Butt. Here's Miss Butt. They could get married and have a bunch of little tushies. Poor Mr. Touchman, answered Mom, shaking her head. Augie hasn't even met the man yet, Nate. Who's Mr. Touchman? Vi said groggily. She had just woken up. He's the principal of my new school, I answered. Paging Mr. Touchman. I would have more nervous. I would have been more nervous about meeting Mr. Touchman if I've known I was going to be meeting some kids from the new school, but I didn't know. So if anything, I was kind of giggly. I couldn't stop thinking about all the jokes Dad was making about Mr. Touchman's name. So when me and Mom arrived at Breacher Academy a few weeks before the start of school, and I saw Mr. Touchman standing there waiting for us in the entrance, I started giggling right away. He didn't look at all like what I pictured, though. I guess I thought he would have a huge butt, but he didn't. In fact, he was a pretty normal guy, tall and thin. Old, but not really old. He seemed nice. He shook my mom's hand first. Hi, Mr. Tushman. It's so nice to see you again, said Mom. This is my son, Augustus. Mr. Tushman looked right at me and smiled and nodded. He put his hand out for me to shake. Hi, August, he said, totally normal. It's a pleasure to meet you. Hi, I mumbled, dropping my hand into his hand while I looked down at his feet. He was wearing red Adidas. So, he said, kneeling down in front of me, so I could take, so I couldn't look at his sneakers, but he had to look at his, so I had to look at his face. Your mom and dad have told me a lot about you. Like, what did they tell you? He said. Sorry, honey, you have to speak up, Mom said. Like what? I asked, trying not to mumble. I admit I have a bad habit of mumbling. Well, that you like to read, said Mr. Tushman, and that you're a great artist. You had blue eyes with white eyelashes, and you're into science, right? I said, nodding. We have a couple of great science electives at Beach, he said. Maybe you'll take one of them. Uh-huh, I said, though I had no idea what an elective was. So, you are ready to take a tour? You mean you're doing it now? You're doing that now? I said. Did you think we were going to the movies? He answered, smiling as he stood up. You didn't tell me we were taking a tour, I said to Mom in my accusing voice. Augie, she stared at. She started to say. It'll be fine, Augustus, said Mr. Tushman, holding his hand out for me to. I promise. I think he wanted me to take his hand, but I took Mom's instead. He smiled and started walking towards the entrance. Mom gave my hand a little squeeze, though I don't know if it was an I love you squeeze or I'm sorry squeeze. Probably a little of both. The only school I've ever seen inside before was Vias, when I went with Mom and Dad to watch Vias sing in spring concerts and stuff like that. The school was very different. It was smaller. It smelled like a hospital. Nice Mrs. Garcia. The following We followed Mr. Tushman down a few hallways. There weren't a lot of people around, and a few people who were there didn't seem to notice me at all, although that may be been because they didn't see me. I sort of hid behind Mom as I walked. I know that sounds kind of babyish of me, but I wasn't feeling very brave right then. We ended up in a small room with the words Office of the Middle School Director on the door. Inside, there was a desk with a nice, seemingly lady sitting behind it. This is Mrs. Garcia, said Mr. Tushman, and the lady smiled at Mom and took off her glasses and got up out of the chair. My mother shook her hand and said, Isabel Pullman, nice to meet you. And this is Augustus, Mr. Tushman said. Mom kind of stepped into the side a bit so I would move forward. Then that thing happened that has happened a million times before. When I looked up at her, Miss Garcia's eyes dropped for a second. She was so fast no one else would have noticed, since the rest of her face actually stayed exactly the same. She was smiling, a really shiny smile. Such a pleasure to meet you, Augustus, she said, holding out her hand for me to shake. Hi, I replied quietly, giving her my hand, but I didn't want to look at her face, so I kept staring at her glasses, which hung from a chain around her neck. Wow, what a firm grip, said Mrs. Garcia. Her hand was really warm. The kids got a killer handshake, Mr. Dutchman agreed, and everyone laughed above my head. We can call you can call me Mrs. G. Mrs. G said. I think she was talking to me, but I was looking at all the stuff on her desk now. That's what everyone calls me, Mrs. G. I got my combination, Miss G. I need a late pass, Miss G. I want to change my elective. Miss G actually is the one who runs the place, said Mr. Tushman, which again made all the grown-ups laugh. I'm here every morning by 7:30, said Mrs. Garcia, continuing, still looking at me while I stared at her brown sandals with small purple flowers on the buckle. So if you ever need anything, Augustus, and I'm the one to ask, and you can ask me anything. Okay, I mumbled. Oh, look for that cute baby, Mom said. Look at that cute baby, Mom said, pointing to one of the photographs on Miss Garcia's bulletin board. Is he yours? No, my goodness, said Miss Garcia, smiling a big smile now that was totally different from her shiny smile. You just made my day. He's my grandson. What a cutie, Mom said, shaking her head. How old? In that picture, he was 5 months, I think, but he's big now, almost 8 years old. Wow, said Mom, nodding and smiling. Well, he is absolutely beautiful. Thank you, said Miss Garcia, nodding like she was about to say something else but about her grandson. But then all of a sudden, her smile was a little smaller. We're, we're all going to take a very good care of Augustus, she said to Mom, and I saw her give Mom hand a little squeeze. I looked at Mom's face, and that's when I realized that she was more nervous than I was. I guess I liked Miss Garcia when she wasn't wearing her shiny smile. Jack, Will, Julian, and Charlotte. Me following Mr. Touchman into a small room across Miss Garcia's desk. He was talking as he was talking as he closed the door to his office and sat down behind his big desk. Although I wasn't really paying much attention to what he was saying, I was looking around at all the things on the desk. Cool stuff like a globe that floated in the air and a Rubik's type cube made with little mirrors. I liked his office a lot. I liked that all were all these neat little drawings and paintings by students on the walls, framed like they were important. Mom sat down in the chair in front of Mr. Tushman's desk, and even though there was another chair next to hers, I decided to stand beside her. Why do you have your own room and Miss G doesn't? I said. You mean why do I have an office? Said Mr. Tushman. You said she runs the place, I said. Oh, well, I was kind of kidding. Miss G is my assistant. Mr. Tushman is the director of the middle school, son, Mom explained. Do they call you Mr. T? I said, which made him smile. Do you know who Mr. T is? He answered. I pity the fool, he said in a funny, tough voice, like he was imitating someone. I had no idea what he was talking about. Anyway, no, said Mr. Tushman, shaking his head. No one calls you Mr. T. Although I have a feeling I'm called a lot of other things I don't know about. Let's face it, a name like mine is not so easy to live with. You know what I mean? Here, I have to admit, I totally laughed because I knew exactly what he meant. My mom and dad had a teacher called Mrs. Butt. I said, Augie, Mom said, but Mr. Tushman laughed. Now that's bad, said Mr. Tushman, shaking his head. I guess I shouldn't complain. Hey, so listen, Augustus. Here's what I thought we would do today. Is that a pumpkin? I said, pointing to a framed painting behind Mr. Tushman's desk. Augie, sweetie, don't interrupt, said Mom. You like it? Said Mr. Tushman, turning around and looking at the painting. I do too. And I thought it was a pumpkin too, but until the student who gave me it explained that it actually was not a pumpkin. It is. You ready for this? A painting of me. Now, Augustus, I ask you, do I really look like that much like a pumpkin? No, I answered, though I was thinking yes. Something about the way his cheeks puffed out when he smiled made him look like a jack-o'-lantern. Just as I thought that it occurred to me how funny that was. Cheeks, Mr. Cushman. And I started laughing a little. I shook my head and covered my mouth with my hands. Mr. Tushman smiled like he could read my mind. I know I was about to say something else, but then all of a sudden I heard other voices outside of his office, kids' voices. I'm not exaggerating when I say this, but my heart literally started beating like I started running the longest race in the world. The laughter I had inside just pure, poured out of me. The thing is, when I was little, I was I never minded meeting new kids because all the kids I met were very little too. That's what's cool about really little kids is that they don't say stuff and try to be hurt your feelings, even though sometimes they do say stuff that hurts. But they don't actually know what they are saying. Big kids though, they know what they are saying, and that is definitely not fun for me. One of the reasons I grew up my hair long because last year when I was that like I how my bangs covered my eyes to help me block out the things that want I don't want to see. Mrs. Garcia knocked on the door and poked her head inside. "They're here, Mr. Tushman," she said. "Who's here?" I said. "Thanks," said Mr. Tushman to Mrs. Garcia. "Augustus, I thought it would be a good idea for you to meet some students you'll be in your homeroom this year. Who'll be in your homeroom this year. I figured they could take you around the school a bit, show you the lay of the land, so to speak." "I don't want to meet anyone," I said to Mom. Mr. Tushman was suddenly right in front of me, his hands on my shoulders. He leaned down and said very softly in my ear, "It'll be okay, Augustus. These are nice kids. I promise. You're going to be okay, Augie," Mom said, whispering with all her might. Before she could say anything, Mr. Tushman opened the door of his office. "Come on in, kids," he said, and in walked two boys and a girl. None of them looked over at me or Mom. They stood by the door looking straight at Mr. Tushman like their lives depended on it. "Thank you so much for coming, guys, especially since school doesn't start until next month," said Mr. Tushman. "Have you had a good summer?" All of them nodded, but no one said anything. "Great, great," he said. "So, you guys, I want you to meet Augustus." Oh, and that's 30 minutes. We will be doing 30 minutes at a time. I hope you liked our story about Augustus and the story Wonder. Again, there's a lot of great things in that book that we need to be reminded of in our everyday lives. So we're going to continue with that. I hope you join us and we'll have fun. And we will do an activity with that book. And the first one we're going to do is a comic strip. So if you look here, I folded this paper into 6 squares. And I put the title Wonder here, and then I wrote comic strip. So what I would like you to do the same, and from what the part we just read, that 30 minutes we just read, I want you to think of 3 scenes that you could draw. Now this isn't, doesn't matter how good your art is. You could draw stick figures or just use your imagination. Pick a scene, draw it, and then maybe put a 1 sentence underneath about what is happening in that scene. And we're going to do that every time we read. We'll do 3 scenes of a comic strip. And then we're going to have a big comic strip at the end when we're done with the book. So if you think about the story that we just read, I would draw 1 scene, then do a sentence, and do 3 of them. And then next time we read, we will do 3 more. And we will continue this. And I will show you my 3 at the beginning of our next one. And I'll always show you my next 3 from the previous time, every time we're together. Okay? So with all that, I'll talk to you guys later, and please take a look at those packets that were sent home. Get some of that work done. Get your work done for school. And if you need anything, your parents know my contact information. We miss you guys, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.